Hey, hello everyone. Okay, good evening to all parents and students. Okay, welcome to tonight's webinar, right, on our PSLE Excellence Series. Okay, so tonight we'll be focusing on mathematics, right? So this session is actually catered for all our parents here, okay, to help you to better be able to support and help your child in their preparation for PSLE mathematics. Okay, now for those of you who are also with you, I mean for the student who are here also tonight joining your parent for this webinar, okay, welcome and glad that you are here with your parent. Okay, because what I'm going to share tonight, what we are going to share with everyone here is going to be some very useful and important pointers that we'll be covering to help everyone to have a better insight, okay, into the preparation for PSLE mathematics. Okay, and definitely you will be also be able to benefit from this. Although this is catered for all parents here. Okay, and certainly I think now that for students who are here, not only will benefit from it, you also know what I'm going to tell your parent, right, with regard to the things that I'm sharing. Okay, so that you can actually better understand and also can work better, with your parent in your preparation. All right. So all parents, okay, welcome once again. Now for tonight's session, um, we will be covering a lot of information to let everyone here to have a good insight, okay, into PSLE mathematics. Okay. Now, not just about knowing what is it about. Now, can I ask? Now, many of parents, right, when you help your child to prepare for mathematics, uh, normally what do you all do? Okay, I've interacted with a number of parents. Okay, and most of the parents actually they will actually talk about practice, right? The more you practice, actually the better the child become, especially for a topic like mathematics. Okay, I'm sure many of you all will also have actually adopted this approach, right, to let your child to have more practice. Now, to do well for mathematics in the preparation, now is it just simply practice? Okay, yeah, practice paper. I know some of you all have actually provided some information on how you do it. Okay, which is very common. Okay, which is actually not wrong with that. But I would like to share after tonight's session to let everyone have a much better insight into the PSLE mathematics, not just from the perspective of the content, but also the way assessment is being done, how questions are being structured, the different level of difficulty, and then the expectation, okay, as well as some of the challenging type of question that I will be also sharing, that most students would have some level of difficulty, and what are those trending kind of questions that your child can expect, to do and to encounter in the PSLE mathematics. So all these things I will share more details as we go through, right? So, everyone, I'm teacher James. So tonight, together with me is teacher Chang Heng. Okay, so we will be here tonight to actually, help everyone to gain that insight, and also feel free to interact with us. Okay, if there's any question that you have with regard to the PSLE mathematics. Okay, now before I start, okay, now in order for me to maybe to understand a bit, okay, the profile of tonight's audience, okay, we do have a big number of participants joining us tonight. So maybe can I just have a quick show of hand? Now let me just pull up my slide first, okay? Okay, I hope everyone can see my slide. Teacher Chang Heng, is my
Yes,
slide
can
okay?
see. Yep,
All right.
can.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, now so for tonight, maybe can I just have a quick understanding of the profile, right? How well have your child been doing for your mathematics? Let's say we based on last year end of year result. Okay, maybe parent you can just simply type into the chat, to have an indication, whether what is the AL score of your child based on last year end of year exam. Okay, okay, good. I have many response coming in. Thank you very much for your sharing. Okay, let me see. Okay, we do have yeah, quite a wide range actually. Uh Quite a wide range, from all the way from the lower AL to the higher AL. Okay. Okay, so we have a quite a wide range of audience here, right? So later I will be going through. Okay, thank you very much for your sharing. Okay, now I will be going through and actually address all the various pointers that will be helpful for everyone here to better understand in terms of how we can more effectively actually help our child in preparing for the PSLE mathematics. Okay. Now, in terms of mathematics, I'm sure that many parents would agree with me, right? That actually over the past year, there has been some incident whereby there's the feedback about the maths paper being too difficult, okay, very challenging. And that some of this actually may even have actually gone into the press. And there was a lot of hoo-ha about it. Okay, because a lot of parents, even they themselves, when they look at the math paper, they also find it very challenging to even attempt the question. Okay. So I think for PSLE mathematics, it does have its fair share of all these uh challenging question that was highlighted. Now, what I'm going to actually highlight over here in the next couple of slides is to let everyone have a better understanding as to the kind of a rigor, okay, for which questions are being set and the different question types, okay, that your child will be going through to let you have a better understanding. So a lot of time, if you want to actually, conquer this subject, right? So it's like the Chinese saying, right? If you want to win a battle, it's important that actually you understand your enemy well. Okay. So I think the insight into the kind of assessment that your child will be going through and the rigor of it, I think will give you some insight, as to how we can actually tailor and help our child in terms of the preparation, okay, especially the different question types. Now, over here, you will see in my next slide, I'm going to share with you the way actually questions are being tiered in a PSLE paper. Okay, so in MOE, when the question are being set, okay, we call it AO1, 2, and 3. Okay, so each of these I will share in detail to explain for the benefit of all parents here to understand the question types that your child will be going through. Now, AO1. AO1 will be question to this question is more straightforward, okay, whereby the expectation here is for the student to be able to recall the basic facts and concept, with regard to the particular topic and to perform straightforward computation. Okay, so this is the question that is usually question that I always told all the students. Okay, they must not miss out in scoring question from this category. Okay, many of them actually they still make mistake. Okay, some due to carelessness. Okay, but these are the questions that you cannot lose marks. Okay, because these are the more straightforward one that you should accumulate all the marks that you can. Okay, so this is the first category of a question. Later, I will show you some example of what I mean by all these different question tiering. Okay, to let everyone have a good understanding. Now, AO2 will be the more demanding question. Okay, for such question, your expectation for the child is to be able to interpret the information that's given in the question. Okay, and with that interpretation, okay, of course they must interpret it correctly to then apply the relevant concept. Okay, and for AO2 question, typically they will actually be tested on a variety of contexts, meaning to say the technique and the skill that your child has learned in the topic, okay, they will be asked in a variety of ways, okay, in a variety of contexts. And your child must still be able to, use that knowledge that they have to apply accordingly. Okay. So again, later I will show you some context, some real example to let everyone better appreciate. And finally will be the AO3 question. AO3 question are question that is the most demanding among all the three categories. Now, these are the questions that actually lead to a lot of hoo-ha in some of the years, right? But some question is like too difficult, where parents write in and then make a lot of question a lot, with regard to why such difficult question have been set. Now, of course, not all questions in AO3 are of that nature. Okay, maybe there's some one or two isolated one in certain year. But generally speaking, questions that fall under this category are questions that require a fair bit of mathematical reasoning. Okay, students are not expected to just simply interpret information. They will be expected to analyze information that's given in a question and to make relevant inference. Does it imply something? Okay, based on information given. So some of the information given are not direct. Okay, but it does imply something. So that implied information, students need to actually pick that up. And not only that, they will then have to then determine what is the most appropriate strategy to solve the problem. Okay, so they may have learned different method, heuristic, and so on, right? To solve problems. So they will need to know what is the relevant strategy. So their mastery of all these techniques are important so that they can be able to determine the correct approach to solve the question. So a fair bit of critical thinking is involved here. Okay, so these are the three levels of difficulty for which questions are being set, in a PSLE paper. Now, next, I will show you, some illustration, okay, to let you better understand what we mean by each of the question. So if you look at on my slide here, you will see that for the first question, right, this one is the AO1 question, is to find the area of the shaded triangle. So in this case here, this shaded triangle, of course, they didn't give you, although it's an AO1, it's not so straightforward as in they give a right angle triangle. The right angle triangle, I think, is very straightforward. But nonetheless, this is still considered AO1 question, right? So to find area of triangle, I think we all know that it's a half base multiplied by the height. And the height that is tested here is to make sure that students know that it must be the vertical perpendicular height, from the base, whichever the base that you are using. Okay, so students, once they know and can recall the correct formula and the basic concept, they will be expected to be able to handle this type of question, confidently and get it correct. So that's the AO1 type of question. Now let's look at AO2. Now on my screen you can see that the second question is about 600 students, right, at a carnival. Okay, now among them there are actually 120 more boys than girls. Okay, so the question is asking for what is the percentage of students that are girls. Okay, so you can see that in this question here is the nature of the question is such that it's not as straightforward as your AO1. Okay, over here require interpretation of the information. So students need to be able to interpret and understand the information that's provided. So it's a little bit indirect, right? Because they didn't tell you exactly how many boys or exactly how many girls, but you need to make use of the difference to determine. Okay, and after you determine, then you still need to be able to apply correctly in terms of the computation of the relevant percentage. So this question here, just to illustrate now, this is the nature of AO2 type of question. Of course, there are many different ways of asking, of setting such a question. Okay, but this is just to give you a flavor, in terms of the kind of rigor and demand for AO type of question. And finally, to illustrate, the third example here, AO3 question. Okay, maybe just for the benefit in case the word is a bit small. Okay, so the question is based on highlighter. Highlighter costs 80 cents and then a pen costs 50 cents. So this information is given in the question. And it says that this person, Mrs. Go, actually bought some highlighter and pen for $19. So how many highlighter, how many pens? Not given. But we know the total amount is $19. And it says that she bought 12 more pen than highlighter. So how many highlighter and pen did she buy altogether? So you can see that for this question here, it requires the student to not only to interpret the information, but need to analyze. Okay, it's not as straightforward. There are some implied information, inference that they must gather from the question, and to analyze the information given, and from there determine what is the most appropriate strategy to actually solve and handle this question. Right. So by looking at these three examples, you can actually have an idea and a better feel, right, in terms of the rigor and the demand for the different category of question, right, based on the AO1, AO2, and the AO3 um, level of difficulty. Okay, I hope that helps to give everyone the context. Okay, next thing that I want to share with all parents tonight here is to let all parents understand the exam that your child will be sitting. Okay, it's important, right? Besides practicing and knowing all the content well, I think it's very important that in all assessment, in all tests, we need to know and be very familiar with the kind of format and the kind of assessment rigor that is set for that particular exam. Okay, so over here, I want to highlight that this is the exam format for paper 1 and paper 2, and this is based on 2025. Now, why I want to highlight this is because starting this year, 2026, okay, your child will be the first batch that is going to take the exam on a new format, okay, a new examination format. Okay, so this is based on last year. So for all the past year paper that you may have, purchased and let your child try, they will all be based on this 2025, and because 2025 and earlier, they're all based on the same format. Okay, so there'll be some slight difference when your child is now sitting the PSLE at the end of this year. Okay, because it will be based on a new format, which I'm going to show and highlight to you how would this new format be like, and some of the implication here. Okay, now over here, the next slide here, this is the new format. Okay, now you can see that it's largely about the same, but there's some adjustment. Okay, now paper 1 and paper 2, you can notice that the total duration is a little bit different. Okay, for paper 1, the duration is now changed to 1 hour 10 minutes. Okay, previously was 1 hour, and paper 2 was a bit longer, 1 hour 30 minutes. Okay, but in the new format, the length given for paper 1 is a bit longer, and they shorten it from the paper 2. Now for paper 1, what is the key changes? Now you will notice that in the MCQ question, okay, there will be 10 MCQ question that worth 1 mark, and there will be 8 questions that worth 2 marks. Okay, as compared to the previous format, whereby there's only 5 2 marks questions. Now, typically for the MCQ question, they tend to be the easier and more straightforward, but not all MCQ are that straightforward. Okay, usually the 2 mark questions are the more challenging one. Okay, so you can see that there's an increase in the number of that. Okay, so the paper 1 now is getting tougher. Now, section booklet B is usually the short answer question. And you can also see that there's also an increase. Previously, there were 10, and now become 12. Okay, so these are some of the key changes for paper 1. Okay, and as a result, they give an extra 10 more minutes, okay, to handle the more challenging question for paper 1. And in the case of paper 2, okay, there will still be short answer question and also the long structured answer question. Okay, so the weightage is adjusted slightly. So there will be 5 2 marks question, and for the remaining long question, whether it's 3 marks, 4 marks, or 5 marks, okay, that will varies, but that will constitute about 40 marks. Okay, as compared to previously was 45 marks. Okay, so for that, actually the time duration was shortened because there's slightly less question. Okay, but doesn't mean that the question is less difficult. Okay, okay, so basically they have lesser time to handle your paper 2 now. Okay, so this is the key changes that your child will be the first batch to be undergoing this new format. Okay, other than that, very much still the same. Both paper will still be taken within the same day, with a break in between the 2 paper. Okay, and paper 1 continue to have the bullet A and bullet B. Okay, so this is some of the key changes that I want to highlight to all parents, and I'm going to share with you what do we mean by some of these changes. Now, the 1 mark question, like I mentioned, these are usually the straightforward, the more straightforward question, typically the AO1 type of question, whereby basic concept will be tested. So just for illustration, you can see that in one of the years, this is just a very typical question from one of any of the PSLE. So I draw this from the year 2019. It can be as straightforward as a question that is as shown over here. Okay, so student will just simply need to know the fundamental mathematical concept and operation, and they should be able to get the answer correct. Okay, but nonetheless, in all our teaching in the class, we still see students making mistake and didn't get all the marks for MCQ question that is 1 mark this type. Okay, so either due to carelessness or they overlook, or sometimes they just think they're too easy, they do a bit too fast and overlook and end up they get it wrong. Okay, so yep, make sure this mark is not lost. Okay, so these are the 10 question with 1 mark under the new format. Now, if you were to look at the 2 mark question, like I mentioned earlier on, it is the more challenging kind of MCQ question, the more tricky and challenging one. And they can actually come from AO2 category or even AO3, depending on how tricky or how difficult it can be set. So not necessarily mean that a multiple choice question are simple, okay? Some multiple choice question can be difficult. And it can be the routine type or it can be the non-routine kind of question. So for this kind of question, I give an example, okay, of what we mean by this to give a flavor on the level of difficulty. Okay, so over here, you can see the example I give over here. Now, this person has 44 tag and pin is drawing, right, side by side. So based on this information, student is supposed to interpret and to analyze the information to know how many drawing did he pin all together. Okay, so you can see that for this question, it's not that straightforward. Okay, it does require a bit of analyzing and thinking through, right, in order to determine the number of what is the correct answer here. All right. And of course, for the case of the remaining 2 mark question that come from your short answer, this can come from your paper 1 bullet B and also your paper 2 2 mark question. So there will be various level of difficulty that spread across all these 2 mark questions. And to let everyone have some idea as to what this question, the expectation, how does it look like. Okay, over here provided one example. Okay, so this one is actually based on information given for a rectangular piece of paper. Okay, so this is a big piece of rectangular paper, and this person is trying to cut as many square as possible from this paper. Okay, based on the dimension given, and the side of this square must be 5 cm. Okay, so the question asks for area of paper left and how many square did the person cut. Okay, so you can see that this question is not as straightforward, although it's based on the simple concept of area of rectangle, area of triangle, rectangle and area of square. Okay, which student would know. Okay, but it's the way the question is being phrased and being said, you can see that actually it can be set in such a way that it's not so straightforward. So students need to apply their concept that they have learned for rectangle and square and apply to this context. Okay, so there are many varied contexts that your child will be expected to handle. So like I mentioned, for AO2 question, it will be based on a variety of contexts. Okay, but the basic concept they will have learned. Okay, so they need to learn how to apply to different contexts. So this is one example of a context, okay, that came out from a past year PSLE paper. Okay. Now this is another example. Okay, so this example you can have a look. Okay, so in a bookshelf, there are large books and there are also small books. Okay, and then they also give you some information about the shelf is already has got 3 large books and 23 small books. All right, so how many more books can this person pack? So again, this is also another illustration of a AO2 type of question, right? Whereby they change to this context. So students need to interpret and analyze the information and to determine an appropriate, strategy to actually solve this question. Okay. So there are different ways of solving, but of course, there are appropriate heuristic, okay, method that can be applied to do this question. Okay, which actually we go through this in our class. So for this, we will talk more about the different, trending type of question that I'll be sharing later on. Okay, and when it comes to the long answered open-ended question, okay, that is from paper two. It can be 3 marks, 4 marks, or 5 marks. Okay, so the important thing over here is in terms of attempting the question, it's important that students must try to show the method of their solution very clearly and logically. Okay, so whatever answer and working step, okay, they must show it because marks are given for working. Okay, and also in terms of unit wise, okay, going forward, right, the exam, they will provide the unit in the blank space. So any unit that's required in the answer will be provided. Okay, so student need to look out, okay, exactly what is the unit they ask for. Okay, so later on we'll also be going through some example, in the later part of today's seminar to highlight some of the typical and commonly encountered error or mistake that student may make, and they should be looking out for that. So later on, we will be going through that in a webinar to help all parents here to also prepare your child. Okay. Okay, the next thing that I would like to actually share over here is in terms of time management. Okay, now it's important that um, able to do the question and learning on the technique well is one thing, but the child must be able to do it within the duration of the exam. Okay, so I have encountered students who actually come and tell me that, hey, teacher, I can actually do the question. Actually, I know how to do. So I'm actually not bad. But just that I didn't score so well because I didn't manage to finish some question. Okay, but actually I know how to do them. Okay. Yeah. So I always tell them, in the exam, okay, it's not good enough to be able to do the question. You must be able to do it with a reasonable amount of speed so they can complete it. So over here is a suggestion. Okay. Okay. Do not overspend your time on certain question that you're stuck in. So we would, as a suggestion, okay, for the MCQ question, if you spend about 10 minutes, basically about 1 minute per question as a max. Okay. Okay, certainly there will be some of the questions that may be really quite straightforward. So your child will probably be spending less time. And that's good. Okay. If the child is doing it correctly and can spend less time, then you can accumulate the time for the remaining section. So for the more tricky MCQ question, okay, the 2 mark one, okay, suggestion here is about 15 minutes, okay, plus minus. Okay, if you can actually spend less time on the first 10 question, then you can give yourself more time to handle the more challenging MCQ question. Okay, but this is just a guide. And of course, when it comes to your booklet B, then that's where you can spend about 40 minutes, for your booklet B. So this will then give yourself an allowance of about 5 minutes for checking, okay, to make sure that you can have an opportunity to just double check your answer and make sure there's no cadet mistake and so on. Okay, so this is some of the suggestion that would like to highlight for the case of paper one. Okay, in terms of time management, right? So as you help your child in the practice, that's also another aspect that you can also help to prepare your child, not only by just simply practicing and more paper. I think it's important to also look out for how are they spending their time for each of the relevant section. Okay, and then from there can fine tune to help them to be able to complete the question, the whole paper in good time. Okay, so that is for paper one. Now, let's move on to some pointers that I would like to also share with regard to paper one. Now, in paper one, do use the pencil to do your working for paper one. Okay. for those rough working, okay? And then use it to then shape on your OAS, right? Because all the MCQ question, when you do the working, okay, you probably do your own working to know what is the correct choice, right, that you're choosing. You can use pencil to do that because after that, you'll be using it to shape your OAS at the same time, okay? So it's convenient, okay? But when it comes to your short answer question, then you switch to your pen, okay, for the short answer question, okay? And when writing down the answer, always check what is the given unit, okay, before writing the final answer on the blank, okay? So, well, it's a good thing that now they provide you with the unit in the on the blank so that you don't need to worry about forgetting to write down the unit. Okay, because you forget to write down your unit, okay, then of course you may also get penalty, right? So, but now with unit provided, there's also another set of things to look out for. Okay, make sure read carefully. Some students I noticed they just mentally assume that it must be in liters or it must be in ml, right? So the question may give the information in terms of ml. Okay, like over here, I give an example, and all the computation is correct. Okay, but make sure that because the question asks for liter, make sure in the final answer you must do a conversion. Okay, and not happily just do all the calculation correctly and then leave the answer as ml when the answer that they're expecting from student is to be in another unit. Okay, so this is something to look out for. Okay, it's also quite common that we have seen students who just simply didn't realize that it was based on liter, so they just write out the answer, 24500. Okay, without realizing that. Some students they just simply, yeah, I would say this is an element of carelessness. Because if you have just paid attention to what they asked for in the unit, then you wouldn't have made this mistake. Okay, but of course, it also means that you must also know your conversion. So some of the students who didn't master it very well and convert wrongly, then of course that will also compromise. You also get penalized. Okay, so I have to be careful with this. Okay, for your this paper one. Okay, now let's move on to paper two. Now, paper two are the one that usually most students will understand, right? This is where a lot of those challenging questions will come from, right? Paper two. So for paper two, the first five question, right? Your short answer question, which is 2 mark each. Okay. Suggestion here is spend about 15 minutes or so. Okay. There about to finish up the first five questions. Okay. So that is based on an average of about 3 minutes per question. Okay, as an average. So when you do your practice, you can start to train yourself up, see whether you can actually complete it within 3 minutes per question. Then you're in good time. Okay. Now, when it comes to the long answer question, okay, it can be 3 mark, 4 mark, or 5 mark. Okay. Altogether, there will be 10 questions, right, in the new format. So for this 10 questions, we recommend maybe about 50 minutes, okay, plus minus. Okay. If you can spend 15 minutes, then of course this will leave yourself with about 15 minutes to do checking. Okay. If you need to spend a bit more time, I think it's still okay. But that means that you may have lesser time to check. Okay. Now, this is some of the suggestion. So it's more as a guide, okay? So that you do your practice, you are also mindful of the time that you're spending per question, okay? To keep track of whether you are able to actually be on track to finish your paper, in good time, okay? So this is for paper two. And of course, one more thing to want to highlight is that paper one, there's no calculator, okay? No calculator is allowed, okay? But paper two, yes, they use calculator to do their computation to better appreciate and to guide your child in terms of things to look out for. Okay, and some pointers here is that now when a question is actually set based on percentage, okay, as a general rule of thumb, it's actually good to actually convert that into fraction, change the percentage to a fraction, okay, and simplify the number. That means in the simplest form, okay. So what do I mean by that? So this will help them to actually do the question a bit more easily. So take for example here, right? In this question, for example, the question says that this person has 75% of John's money. Okay. So when you convert this to fraction, it means 75% means 3/4. So it means that Ali has 3 units as compared to John would have 4 units. Okay, if you were to interpret this way. So by converting into a fraction, make it a bit easier rather than to work in percentage. Okay, so then you can express in terms of ratio, and they can use the ratio approach to solve the problem sum if possible. Okay, so that's just a general rule of thumb that usually if you do that, it will help to make the question a bit easier to manage. Okay, and the other thing is also to make sure you separate the working step. This one is actually very common. We see this quite often. Okay, student, they will write the working and do the computation, everything done correctly. Final answer is also correct. But then there's an issue with the way they do their working. So you can see on the slide here, you can see, I think parents here look at it, you probably can agree with me, right? Mathematically, there should not be actually two equal sign in one row. You should only have, only one. Now in terms of working through, do look out for that, okay? So that they don't become a habit and start to, get you with, a one line with more than one equal sign. I haven't even seen cases of students writing one line, one row, right, with more than two equal sign. Okay, three equal sign. Okay, sometimes they got run out of space or maybe it's just a habit. They do that. Okay, okay, so it's something to look out for. Okay, please don't do that. And of course, for paper two, it's also good to sometimes if you have the you make, and then that will help you to arrest all this, and then you can get back some of the marks that you may have lost. So you can use this method of working backward to actually help check your answer. Okay, now the other thing to also in our preparations for PSLE mathematics, I think it's also very important to analyze as well, right? Which I want to share with all parents here in terms of the different topics that they will be covered in their syllabus. Okay, so there are topics like numbers, measurement and so on, geometry, ratio, percentage. These are all the different category of topics that actually I have categorized based on the way MOE has also structured the PSLE content. So over here you can see over here I summarize it in terms of the topic, based on the past 10 years of data that we can gather. So you can see that actually the percentage of questions coming out from the respective topic varies. Okay, and there are some topics that is more important than others. Okay, simply because of the weightage, based on weightage alone. Okay, because if you are doing well for that particular topic, okay, then you would benefit, right? Because that particular topic, let's say, got a high weightage, then you should likely to be able to do a lot of questions that is coming from that particular topic. But similarly, if let's say, for example, if let's say your geometry is not a very strong area, it's one of the weak area, and geometry is also quite a significant weightage, then you may want to strategically in your preparation to make sure you pay some attention to mastering those topics. Okay, because that topic got high weightage. So you would not want to actually lose simply because you are not. This is some information that I just want to highlight. So you can see, I think top of the among all the category, numbers and algebra, okay, which is a lot of assessment book and books, right? Textbook, they will actually classify that. Okay, so this one is a high percentage. Okay, followed by measurement. Okay, thereabout. Okay, it's also a very high percentage in terms of in comparison with the other topic. So this will be topic that is involving things like your length, area, parameter, volume, and so on. Okay, and the other major area to also look out for is your geometry, ratio, and percentage. Okay, so these are also another area that you know then good news. Okay, but if any of this category is not your strong area, then you may want to strategically prepare yourself to make sure that it is no longer a weak area, right? It become a strong area with practice and with attention given now. Given that now it's beginning of year, so there's still time, right, for you to do something about it, to help yourself. Okay, now with this, I would like to actually share some of the trend that we see from the PSLE paper. Okay, some of the recent trend, and some of the trending question later on, I will also be going through with you, and teacher Chang as well. Okay, now before that, I just wanted to highlight some key aspect of a PSLE question that you may want to look out for and to see how best to help your child, right? So that as your child is doing the question, you can see the kind of expectation at the way the question are being set. Now, critical thinking skill is something that in terms of recent trend, there are questions that more and more questions that tend to actually test a child to apply critical thinking. Okay. Now later we will share a bit more details on that. So meaning to say, for critical thinking, right, it's more than just simply be able to just know the mathematical technique well, is not enough. Okay, because the question can be asked in a way whereby it may not be very routine kind of question. And then you will need to really think critically to see how best you need to actually approach the question. So later I will share some actual example to actually give you some appreciation as to what we mean by those questions that require this aspect, from your child. Now, application question. This application question, it can be based on very simple concept, okay? But it can be applied in different type of context. And, as you can see from the earlier example, right? Just now there was an example whereby the very basic concept, just finding the area of square and area of rectangle, okay? Which many students will be able to master this basic concept. But it's the way the question is being applied, okay, that can make it challenging. Okay, so these are the application type of question that is also something that is to be the trend now, over the more recent years, and also require the combination of skill and strategy. So increasingly questions are set such that students need to actually combine more than one type of skill that they have. So it can be a topic on geometry, okay? And you can actually combine that with a topic on ratio, okay? So you need to actually, based on what you learn in the different topic, and then address the question appropriately, okay? And also question based on real life experience. So there will be also question that is just simply based on real life. It's not really about any particular calculation, but you must be able to relate. So later I will also show you an example of what we mean by that. So meaning to say, it's important that as you prepare for the PSLE math paper, okay, students need to be also more aware of your surrounding, things that you will typically encounter, be it in the supermarket, even at home, okay? So there'll be question on that. So like, for example, there can be a question. I give a simple example, right? The question can be set on asking as a multiple choice question. Ask you, what is the height of your bedroom door? Okay, so they give you, 4 choices. And then students are supposed to look at it and choose the right answer. So many students actually, they don't really have that sensing, right? To them, 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, or 60 cm, don't really have that sensing of exactly how long is that length. Okay, so there can be questions that are set on that, and then it's really based on your real life experience. So in the real life that you encounter, things that you encounter, it's good to be more aware, and so that you can actually handle questions that comes up from this aspect. Okay, which can be anything under the sun. Okay, and finally, make sure that all the topic that you have learned since P4, okay, until P6, make sure you revise them and know them very well, okay? Because some very basic concept that you learned previously can still be tested, okay? Whether is it on time, whether it is on money, and so on. All these things that you have learned previously, they can also be tested. So again, depending on the question is set at the AO1, AO2, or AO3 level, a simple concept can be made tough, okay? Simply by the way the question is being designed, okay, to test your thinking skill. Okay, now some of the essential skills that I would like to highlight to all students here in the preparation and parent helping your child. Okay, some of the key skills to do well for PSLE mathematics, which a lot of times um I have this question coming from parents, right? So first and foremost, actually, I want to summarize it to just these 4 points. Okay. Now, I would consider as ability to able to combine the skills and the problem-solving strategy. So to do that, it's important that the student or your child must have a strong mastery of all the skill and heuristic and all the strategy that they are learning. This will actually be a criteria for them to be able to then confidently able to then mix and match, right? So if you know all the different skill and technique very well, then you are in a much more better position to be able to to then mix and match accordingly based on the demand of the question, what you need. Okay, so this ability is something that can be achieved through practice to gain that competency. Okay, now that alone is not enough. Okay, I think we need accuracy as well. So on this, what we mean is that your answer must be accurately represented. Okay, you may have done all the good work in terms of computation, but make sure that in the final answer or that you're working on, make sure it is actually in the correct unit or the right decimal place. Okay, so accuracy is something important, and I do see even some of the stronger students that I encountered, they also are guilty of committing error and losing unnecessary mark due to accuracy. Okay, now speed is the other thing, right, which I highlighted earlier on. So therefore, the time management that I mentioned is important. A lot of times, all this time management is cannot be mastered overnight. So it need to progressively, train yourself up so that you can work within the time required. So speed is important. Now, how do we then achieve the speed needed? Apart from having a good competency and knowing, also about, mastering some of the basic thing about math. Okay. Some shortcut and math actually do help you to save and avoid making mistake. Okay. A simple example will be your timetable. Okay. Now I must stress that timetable is very important, that you must really know it by your fingertip. Okay. Now I have seen many students, okay, even up to P5 and P6, they not to your advantage, because if you know timetable very well, it will help you to do some simple mental math. And when you do the working, actually, because you know this timetable very well, right, you will be able to actually pick up some error along the way. Okay, be it a computation error, even if you use calculator to help you to key in the to compute the answer. Sometimes you key in wrongly, right? You punch wrongly or you punch too fast. End up they give you a different answer. But because you're very familiar, right, the moment you get the answer, you straight away ring a bell. This number looks a bit not so right. Okay, because you're very familiar and you can do a quick mental check. So it will help you in your speed as well. Okay, and finally, stamina. Okay, now you must have the stamina to be able to last through the rigor of the exam. So consistent practice and attempting all the question actually also helps you to build up your stamina. Okay, to be able to have the concentration span to last you through the duration of the paper. Okay, so you'll be intense concentration, right, as you work through, and you must be able to work through one challenging question after another. Okay, so the mental strength is important, and that need can only be built up over time. Okay, so to have that stamina is important. So that's some students actually they don't have the stamina. So after a while, they mentally become tired. So subconsciously they start to make mistake, and they start to be able to question that they're supposed to do the question, when they're fresh, but they start to, because of lack of stamina, they start to lose concentration and not be able to focus so well, and end up, don't do so well for for those questions, right? So stamina is important. Okay. Okay. Now some useful tips that I just want to share also with parents in terms of how you can actually prepare for the PSLE mathematics. Help your child to prepare for PSLE mathematics. Now, sticky pad is sticky note, okay, is something that is very common, right? I know a lot of people, a lot of students, they will use this method, okay, which is good, okay. So you can just tag on to certain questions that you want to, pay attention to, so that you can always refer to it, for your revision easily, right? So that is something that I noticed the number of students do that. If you have not been doing that, okay, that's something you can consider. Now, notable number, okay. So just now I mentioned to you about timetable, okay. So this is closely associated with that, okay. So what we mean by notable number will be things like, your square number and your cube number, okay. At the primary level, these are the two type of number that, if you know them very well, okay, it's to your advantage, okay. So when you're doing question, okay, you can easily see through, some of uh, the way to solve the question. Actually, you can better see through the approach that should be applied. Okay, a good example will be question that is belong to the pattern. Okay, so they give you various pattern, right? So when you analyze the question, it's important that you can see what is the pattern so that you can approach the question, appropriately. So it will help if you know all these notable number well. Okay, then it will put you in a much better position to then pick up the relevant pattern, or combination of pattern that you can gather from the question. Okay. And of course, there are also special code. When we talk about special code for specific question, it means that these are the different heuristic, okay, that you'll be learning, right? So in my structure, we call this the MS power code, okay, whereby we'll equip our student with all the different heuristic, okay. These are basically very efficient method to address problem sum. Okay? If you apply the correct, um, you know, um, method and strategy, you will find that a seemingly difficult question actually can be solved very efficiently. Okay, so it's important that, in the preparation for PSLE mathematics, do revise and make sure that all the different kind of power that you are learning, for MS student, okay, learn them well. Okay, it will put you in a good position to handle the challenging question. And of course, practice perfectly and clarify consistently. Okay, so this one is something that always do that, be it in school or when you go for your mind structure lesson. Okay, so consistently ask and clarify any doubt that you have. Okay, and working backwards, of course, we talk about that as well, right? It helps you to check your answer and observe everyday life activity. So this one is to develop that number set. So the example I mentioned to you about what is the height of a typical bedroom door. So then you will to choose the most appropriate answer. Okay. This is not really testing you on any particular math calculation, right? It's simply just to test you on some number sense. Okay. And finally, to have this good habit of the mind, when I talk about that, it means referring to have that creative and critical thinking. So that will help you to um be very open-minded about how you solve a question. So do not be very fixated with the try and tested method that you have learned. Sometimes certain questions require you to think critically and have a combination of approach, or maybe apply the technique in a slightly different way. Okay, so usually this apply to the non-routine kind of question and some of the trending question that I'm going to share later on, together with teacher Chang Heng as well, to let you have some idea as what do we mean by critical thinking. Now, moving on, the next part will be what I'm going to share in terms of some of the trending challenging question. But before that, this is another illustration of what we mean by the number sense. Okay. Now, in this question here, you can see that the question asks for the height of the bookshelf. Okay, based on the diagram. So student must have that sense of exactly how what's the length of 1 meter as versus 5 meter. Okay, so a lot often we do see students who don't really have that sensing, so they may actually choose something that is actually really to the parent, I mean, to adult look at it, you will know that totally cannot be that answer, right? But because they don't have that sense on exactly how long or how heavy, so they will not be able to choose the most appropriate answer. Okay. And this is another type of question that's based on algebra, okay, that I want to share. Now, for a very typical AO1 question, like the first one at the top, you can see that algebra type of question is based on very straightforward um, answer. But actually, it can also be set in a slightly different context. So you can see that in the second question at the bottom, you can see that the application of algebra here actually does require the student to interpret the information and to do some simple formulation of the question in algebraic form. Okay, so it's actually they do need to formulate an equation, all right, but a simple one. Okay, so you can see that actually the demand here is slightly different, right? It's actually different from the first one, which is the more straightforward AO1 question. Okay, now the next section here will be the various type of challenging question that a lot of students actually do face difficulty. Okay, so these are the trending, challenging kind of questions that I actually categorize them. Um, those that require power codes to solve, okay, meaning to say your mastery of the various heuristic, the technique is important, and that will help you to solve the question efficiently, even those seemingly no difficult question. Okay, you can actually solve quite efficiently if you use the correct heuristic. And of course, there are questions that is what we call visualization skill. You do require some visualization skill to be able to handle those questions, in addition to the math concept that you have learned. Okay. And of course, pattern, analysis, and also the logical reasoning kind of question. So for such question, you will find that you not only need to know and master your math technique well, but it's important that there's some logical reasoning, mathematical reasoning that you need to apply, okay, in order to apply what you have learned in terms of the basic concept to the context of the question. So again, all this we will be going through some specific actual example, okay, to let all parents here better appreciate, what are these different category of challenging question. As well as the last one over here, I mentioned this is the non-routine question, so they can better appreciate, and you can see whether what is your area of weakness for your child, and you can actually better actually support them, their mastery, of the more challenging question, right, that they will encounter in the PSLE paper. Okay, so for the first one, right, in terms of the different power codes, right, at MindStretcher, we teach our students all the different types of power code to handle different variety of questions. So each one of them represent um, technique, okay, for them to actually understand and to solve the question. So these are just some example, okay, on this slide. Actually, there's more than what I show on the slide. These are the more commonly encountered one. Actually, there's a lot more that we teach our student. So over here is some example. So the example here is actually using this method known as the units and value. Okay, so these are some of the kind of question that actually it can be, or first look at it, if someone who do not know the heuristic and the method may find that actually the question is not that straightforward. It can be quite tough, okay, to actually think through. So it's only through learning all these techniques, actually it will help the student to solve it efficiently. So the mastery of this is important. Okay, of course, there's more than one way of doing a question. Okay, we're not saying that need to use the heuristic, but it does provide with a more efficient way of doing the question, and it can actually make the question more manageable, right? So this is one aspect of those challenging questions that students will get to encounter. And I must highlight that in some of the more difficult questions, it's also possible that in one problem sum, you can combine more than one type of heuristic. That means you must apply two different heuristics in order to solve that question. Therefore, students who know it well, then they will be able to in a much better position to be able to handle question of this nature. Okay. Now visualization. Now this is another type of question that parent can help your child to see whether if this an issue that your child have. Now for this type of challenging question, it does require some mental to be able to mentally manipulate the information that is given in the problem sum. Okay, so it do require students to not just know about volume or area of an object, okay, that they learn whether is it a square or rectangle, but it also require the added demand to be able to reason it visually. Okay, so this is an example of a PSLE question, right, where they ask you how many cubes have exactly four sides that are painted if this whole solid is now dipped into a paint. Okay, so this is one variation. There are other way of setting such question. Okay, this is another example from one of recent year, 2022. Okay, so they give a partial, a diagram of a particular part of a solid, and the question breaks into two parts, right? Part A and part B. So you can see that this question is also require student to not just know how to compute, okay, the required volume or to find the number of cube, okay, but it does require visualization as well, okay. And this is some other further example, right? It can also appear in your MCQ. So not necessarily such question will only appear in your paper 2, okay, long question. It can actually appear in your paper 1. So remember earlier on I shared, paper 1 have also the more challenging 2 marks question. So these are the kind of another illustration of how it can actually appear in the case of a paper 1. Okay. And patterns, right? Pattern is another category of question. What I show over here, I think this one is a more typical kind of question, right? That often if you been helping and working with your child on practice, some of the past question, be it from school and so on, you'll see this kind of question do appear quite frequently, a very typical one, or from assessment book, okay, whereby you need to see the pattern, and that's where you need to know your those notable number well, right? Be it a square number or is it a cube number. So this will help. Okay. But pattern question can be set in a different context. So this is an example of a question from 2020. Okay. You can see that it's totally different from the one that you see previously. Nonetheless, it's still the same concept that has been tested. Okay. So, but the context has changed. Right? They have this ring. Okay. The key thing is here that the ring are all identical. So the pattern will just keep on repeating. So this is to illustrate, to let all parents have a better appreciation that, this category of question, there are many different ways of asking, right? So this is another example of how your child will be tested, okay, and what they can expect to go through. The next one here is also on the same context, okay? So you have all the cups being stacked up, but these are all identical cups. So again, there are some repeated pattern that you can derive now based on the information given. So a lot of times students not only need to know the method, okay, if they know that's from pattern, a lot of times the way you approach the question also very much depend on the information that's given, okay, so that you are able to approach the question in the most appropriate manner. Okay, so in the recent year 2023, this is another example, okay, whereby they give you a certain pattern and then they ask you to find and extrapolate the pattern in this kind of context. Okay, so rather than the typical way of asking, they can also ask in this way, right? So they provide information in part B, right? They give you information about the final, combination in terms of the length and the number of straw. So you're supposed to determine and solve the solution, solve to find the solution. Okay. So these are some of the training questions that we like to share with all parents to let you better appreciate and to help you to support your child to handle the different categories so that you are aware of the different category of the trending challenging question. So I will let Teacher Chang Heng to continue to share with you another few more category that actually we have prepared for everybody tonight. Okay, so I'll stop share here. Teacher Chang Heng.
Okay, thanks, Teacher James. Okay, so I will take over to share more of the more common trending kind of questions that will be tested in PSLE and also school exams. Okay. So here, in primary school years, okay, students are also exposed to data analysis. Okay, so in terms of the type of graph that a PSLE student will be looking at is usually things like bar graph, pie charts, line graphs. Okay, so these are actually all the more common types of graphs that students will see in the exams. So one of them that you see here in the screen. Okay, I believe you all can see my screen, right? So this one is showing you a bar graph. This question comes out from PSLE 2020. Okay, still quite recent years. So this type of question is appearing in paper one also. Okay, it's not only in paper two, so they will also ask this question in paper one as MCQ questions. So what basically here is student has to link looking at the bar graph. Okay, they have to read the bar graph here, and also they have to link this concept to the percentage that they have learned, right? As you can see, the table there shows the number of fruits in terms of percentage. Okay,
Mm,
it's not in numbers. So this requires your child to have the ability, okay, to read the graph and also link to the percentage that they have learned. Okay, so this is something that requires them to, this is like a mixture of AO1 and AO2 type of questions here, right? AO1 simply reading graph, AO2 type of questions to link to percentage here. Okay, so here, okay, so they have to link up concepts. And another type, which is also very typical of this kind of data analysis questions that will appears in generally paper 2 is this kind where you have given two bar graph and you're supposed, okay, so your child is supposed to compare, right? Compare the two graphs, and then what they need to do is to interpret, right? Okay, so this is a bit of the so-called AO2, AO3, mixture of AO2, AO3 kind of questions here, whereby you have to read the graph and then we do comparison and then have to interpret. Okay, if you look at part A, okay, they purposely give you missing data. Okay, so what happens here is they will tell you the total, and you're supposed to know that from the total, okay, you are expected to find how many yellow files, right? Given some of the information given there, they say half of the files were yellow, right? So they have to understand that, okay, whatever shown as the blue, green, red is actually also half, and the other half, right, remaining half. So they have to infer from that so that they can find the numbers of yellow files. And then when you look at part B, okay, they start to compare, right? How many colors of files did shop A sell more than shop B? Okay, so from here, they have to read both graph, do a comparison, and then interpret, right? So this is the expected skill they are supposed to know. Okay, and I mentioned just now, right? It's not only one type of graph, bar graph. So here they are exposed to different types of graph. Okay, here we can also see there's pie chart, right? So pie chart, okay, they are expected to know how to read from the pie chart. Okay, because a pie chart will show you 100%. So this is something that they have to know, right? Reading from the pie chart. And if the pie chart shows you about half, then you have to infer that, oh, this is about 50%. Right. For example, the pen and eraser could be about 50%. The total of notebooks and rulers here is about 50%, something like that. Okay, so more information will also be given sometimes. Like for example, if they give them the angles, okay, the degrees, okay, so they can use the angles or degrees, okay, to find out about the numbers of pens, eraser, for example. Okay, so and the bar graph, they are supposed to read from there, and then they have to compare, right? So just now we are comparing bar graph versus bar graph. Here, okay, we are comparing two different types of graph. Okay, so this tests them whether they know how to read different type of graph given to them. Okay, and also line graph. Okay, as mentioned, line graph. So sometimes line graph, they will ask questions that within what is being shown here. Like for example, this question that comes out from 2022. Okay, so basically they only show you part of the graph. They don't show you the whole picture here. Okay, so they say that they only shows you the distance that band cycles at the first 15 minutes. Okay, so, and what they are asking here is actually, if you look at the question here, they say that the distance between Ben's home and school is 7.5 kilometers, right? So what it means here is, actually, when you look at the graph itself, the graph only shows you up to 3 kilometers. So you are expected, okay, you're expected to find, okay, the data that is not within this graph. Okay, you're supposed to infer, okay, what is the time taken, okay, for 7.5 kilometers or so forth, right? So this type of question could also come out also, right? Okay, to infer what you see, not only what you see, but infer things that is beyond what is given here also. Okay, so moving on to okay, the next part here, applied learning. What do we mean by applied learning here? Okay, so besides, okay, math is not just about computations and numbers. Okay, of course, we do see the use of math in our daily life here. So questions that are relevant to day-to-day our daily life here can also be applied here, right, in our real world situation. Okay, this type of questions requires students to apply the concept, okay, given to the context, right, rather than just regurgitate what they have learned. It's not, maths is not all about just memorizing and practicing. Sometimes, okay, you have to exercise a bit of your common sense here, what we call common sense here, right, into the real world situations. Okay, because sometimes when you try to find things like numbers of oranges, for example, okay, if you find that your answer ends up as a fraction, okay, maybe it's still possible. Maybe you say you have half of an orange, okay, still possible. But what if the context is things like how many boys, how many girls? So if you have answers like fractions, then you start to wonder, how can I have two and a half boys, right? That's not possible, right? Correct? So sometimes when you find the answer, you have to make sure that you understand whether your answer, right, whether it's reasonable, whether it's logical here, right? So it always ties into what we have mentioned earlier. Okay, so this is like some kind of your AO2 kind of questions, right? You have to understand and apply those concepts and skills, okay, given the real life constraints and context here. Okay, examples. Okay, example things that you want. You can use your logic and mathematical reasoning here. Basically, when you look at this type of questions here, okay, so this type of question is basically asking you, your child, to decide. Okay, there will be some statements given in the questions, and your child, you're supposed to decide whether this is a true statement, false statement, or not possible to tell. Okay, so this seems like quite easy. It seems like quite easy. It seems like oh, out of the three, I just choose one. Okay, but behind the logic here is not that easy. Why? Because they didn't ask you to only state whether it's true or false, right? They also have an option to put it as not possible to tell. So not possible to tell is not your child don't understand the question, then put not possible to tell. The not possible to tell option is to make sure that your child really understood the question, what they asked. Okay, so whether the question has given the information that is required for you to decide whether the statement is true or false. Sometimes, okay, the question itself will not give you that information. So if your child is able to reason out that, oh, there's no way that I can get an answer to this statement given the information in the problem. Okay, so they are supposed to check the not possible to tell uh, column here. Okay, so this is not as easy as 50-50% chance here. Okay, so they have to really understand the questions given here, and they're supposed to check the correct column here. Okay, so these are some of the examples that you can see. Maybe I can go through one, just the first one. Okay, so things like the statement here says that the total number of students in the camp is a multiple of 5. Okay, so this really tests your child whether they really understand what the question is asking here. Okay, so if we read the questions, okay, they say that teams are split into A and B. 3/5 of the students are in team A, rest in team B. So what does it mean? It means that rest is 2/5, right? So 3/5 in team A, 2/5 in team B. As mentioned just now, right, there's no such thing as 2.5 boys and girls, right? So logically speaking, so when we talk about 3/5 of the students, the number of students must be in multiples of 5. Like for example, 5 students, so out of 3/5 of the 5 students means 3 students are in team A, 2 students are in team B. Or if there's 10 students, 3/5 of 10 is 6. So it means 6 students are in team A, 4 students are in team B. So the underlying meaning is no matter what, the number of students must be a multiple of 5. Correct? If it's not multiple of 5, then it doesn't make sense. Okay? There's no such thing as 2.5 children. So for statement A, so the answer should be true here. Okay, so things like this. So they must make sure that the child really understand the question here, right? In order to check the correct column here. Okay, so here is another example. Okay, that comes up from 2020 also, quite a recent year also. So you can see that this kind of question is quite trending nowadays. The true, false, or not possible to tell type of questions. Okay, it keeps appearing in PSLE. So this type of questions, your child has to learn, okay, how to reason out this type of questions. Okay, so this is one of the more trending recent years type of question. Okay, and okay, so not just only simply just a question on asking you whether true, false, or not possible to tell. You can see that this type of question also can come up with mixing with other types of problems here, like the geometry, right? So you are supposed to know whether whatever statement given in this question is true or false. Okay, so a lot of students may think that, like for example, the first statement here, okay, they say that whether this PQAS is a parallelogram. Okay, sometimes in terms of diagram, they will draw in such a way to give you an illusion that this could be a parallelogram. Okay, so if your child will not be is not able to use the correct reasoning, right? To find the angles here, to make sure that they check whether the property of parallelogram is correct here, they will think that yes, it's true based on what they observe. Okay, but the answer here is actually false. This is not a parallelogram. Okay, even though it looks like one. Okay, the reason why is because if you check the angles, okay, you notice that the angles by right PSR is 110, PQA should be also 110. Okay, but it's not. Okay, so cannot base on just purely looking at the diagrams to deduce the answer here. Okay, there's some reasoning that is required from a child. Okay, so talking about okay, so recent years there's also many kind of this non-routine questions. Okay, so this is actually quite close to studying patterns here also here. Okay, so in terms of giving you numbers or giving you those kind of like triangle type of questions that you've seen earlier just now, where teacher just shared. Okay, so this kind of question is also looking for patterns, right? So if you notice that, okay, this string here, okay, it goes in a pattern with the shape of stars and hearts. Okay, so you have to repeat. Okay, for all this kind of repeated patterns, you have to first identify the basic repeated patterns. Okay, so what you see here should be 2 stars, 1 heart, 1 star, 1 heart. Okay, that will repeat, right? 2 star, 1 heart, 1 star, 1 heart. This will repeat itself. So they already tell you there's 135 stars, but okay, there's another thing for you to consider here is because if you look at the second statement, they say about possible numbers of hearts. So it means that oh, there's not only one and only answer here they're looking for. They're actually looking for more than one answers here, right? So this make your child's okay, this requires your child to think, right? What are all the possible answers here, right? So they have really stated very clearly, and there's not only one answers here. So if you are using the same way, same trend of thoughts to find patterns, right? So usually patterns, eventually you also end up with one answers here, but no. Okay, and in these situations, they're actually looking for more than one possibility here. So they have to consider different possibility, whether the hearts are Is it appears one more heart before, or the heart appears after? So there are different situation scenarios whereby they have to consider to get the different answers here. Okay, so so okay, so if you look at the past years, right? So the questions have actually evolved. As in, okay, when you look at things like this kind of geometry questions whereby they ask you about finding the shaded part of the areas of the circles. Okay, so last time, okay, so what they can do here is they purposely piece out a lot of different when you look at the 1986 papers, they'll piece out a lot of things like half circles, semicircles. Okay, they give you big semicircles, small semicircles, and they piece out together and ask you to find the total area here, right? Or the one that you see in 2001. They give you a big circle, then they ask you, they put in more different types of circles to ask you to find overlap areas, right? And so on and so forth. So they're actually piecing out different areas of circles, right? To find the overlap parts here. But if you look at the recent trend, the 20191, okay, so they no longer find area. Okay, suddenly they ask for overlap parameters, right? So the questions has actually evolved into different varieties here, right? So instead of overlap areas, define now they do overlap parameters, right? So you can see that here they give you all the some of the overlaps area. They do not tell you what is the radius. They do not tell you what's the diameter. Okay, it's no longer that straightforward here, right? So they are supposed to find the radius, right? Or the diameter here. Okay, the question asks them to find the diameter here, right? So instead of giving them straight away radius and diameter, they give them the overlap parts. And based on the overlap parts they have to decide to find out what's the radius and diameter here. Okay, so even questions have evolved over the years. And some of the non-routine questions also consider this kind of what we meant by visualization. So this is also part of incorporating visualizations together with your area here, right? So how do you train your child to see things like this? Okay, for triangle, especially triangles, right? There's something that a lot of students that they cannot see here is okay. The formula for triangle is actually half times base times height, right? So basically, as long as you keep your base, okay, so if you want to change your height, you need to make sure that the height remains the same. Okay, so for example, in this question, probably for part B here, they ask the student to draw another triangle ABG, right? Such that it has the same area, but the triangle cannot overlap with the trapezium ABCD. Okay, so intuitively, right? So the easiest way out here is basically to draw. Okay, most of them will actually put a point somewhere here, this part here. Okay, so that to make a mirror reflection here, right? But they purposely restrict that because they do not want them to just draw a triangle that is a reflection, right? About the line AB here. Okay, so they purposely say that it cannot overlap with ABCD here. So the actual answer to this is they need to understand that if your AB has to stay the same because they require ABG, right? Means your line AB has to be the same. So the base is fixed. So what you can do here is to look out for another point such that the height, the perpendicular height, is the same. Okay, so if you look at the red dotted line, the red dotted line is to help you to guide you to see that eventually, if you have a point that is any point on that red line, it will give you the same height because the perpendicular height is preserved, okay, along that red dotted line. So the correct answer should be something like this, okay? So this triangle will then have the same area as your triangle ABE, okay, because the formula is half times base times height. Base is AB, height is any point. Okay, the perpendicular height is the same at any point along the red dotted line. Okay, so this will need your child to be trained in such a way that they can see, right? See that these are equal. Okay, so here, a more recent type of question here coming from 2023. Okay, so here we have example of this shape, trapezium shape here. They do not tell you what's the dimension. They only tells you the total, right? So you have to find each of the dimension of the trapezium yourself here by giving you overlap shapes and then telling you the total. Okay, so they need to know roughly, okay, how to find the overlap parts here, right? So if you look at this shape here, okay, you can see that they want you to find PQ, okay, but basically PQ here, for the three shapes, right, there are actually overlaps here, okay? When two shapes join together, the overlap parts PQ is twice, overlap twice. And here, okay, the third shape and this shape here, there's also an overlap here. So basically, there's an overlap of 4PQ here. Okay, this 4PQ is not considered in your total parameter when they counted figure 2 as 204 as the parameter here. So you're missing 4 length of PQ here. So you're supposed to use 96 multiplied by 3 because there's three shapes. Okay, minus away 204. Whatever that is missing, okay, that will be equals to the length of 4PQ here. Okay, so this is something that your child has to train them, okay, to understand the questions and how to find this type of question easily. Okay, so the next question here is, okay, I do see some people asking this question just now. Okay, whether is that, okay, whether if you're working, you got it, you working, you got it wrong, right? And also your answer got it wrong, right? But the thing is, if your method, okay, when you list out your method is correct, right? Okay, so there is something that the markers will still give you the method marks if your method is correct, even though you make a careless mistake in calculating your answers. Okay, so the reason why it is so important to show every step is because, yes, look at this. Okay, so this is actually the marking scheme here, if you can see that will shows you the correct solutions, and those in red are actually the marking scheme here. Okay, M1 means method mark, 1 mark. So A1 means answer mark, 1 mark. Okay, so for example, okay, if you look at the right side here, if a student has calculated something wrong right from the beginning. And for example, if you look at the solution on the right, $25 plus $3 equals to $27, right? So when you look at the correct answer here on the right side, it's supposed to be 28, not 27. Okay, so what happens here? Okay, so obviously, if you are going to use the answer 27 and use it to calculate the remaining steps here, obviously you will end up with a wrong answer here, right? Okay, so these are actually the errors carried forward through the steps. And why? Why is this so important to write out all the steps here? Because the marker will be able to tell that actually what happened here is you already make a calculation mistake in your first step. So whatever that you have done is actually correct. Your method is correct. It's just that you have actually carried forward a wrong answers here, right? So based on the marking scheme, you can see that this person will still be able to get the method marks here. Okay, obviously the answer marks is wrong. Okay, the person will not get the answer marks because the answer is wrong. However, okay, if your steps is the same as the marking scheme, you will still get the method marks. Okay, so it's always best to show all your workings out and also show them clearly, okay, in order to get the method marks. Okay, so the next part, so I'm going to talk about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in terms of your presentation of working here. So you can see, here's some of the very common ways students are presenting their answers on the left. Things like 20% equals to $60. Okay, 20% is not the same as $60. So what is actually correct here is you are trying to say that 20% of the money or the amount is equals to $60. Or if you don't want to use, or if you think that this is too lengthy to write, okay, so you can also use the arrow 20% to represent $60. Okay, so this is the correct way of presenting your answer working here. And the second example, 1/4 equals to 48. Okay, a fraction cannot be equals to a number. So what you need to show here is the 1/4 of the quantity here, which is example, the boys is equals to 48, or 1 unit is equals to 48. Okay, so this is the correct way of presenting your answers. And also, in terms of when you need to round off your numbers, okay, so you're supposed to use the estimation sign here instead of putting it equal. Okay, 1.9 is not equals to 5. Okay, so the correct way of presenting is to put the correct sign here. Okay, so in terms of money, yeah, there's a lot of different ways students are presenting their answers here. So, but remember, money is always in two decimal place, correct? So if you want to write it in terms of decimal, so you have to put it as $0.50, not 0.5. Okay, it's always in two decimal place. And if you want to put it in cents, okay, there's no such thing as 0.50 cents. Okay, so what you mean here is 50 cents. So you cannot put as 0.50. That's wrong. Or putting dollars and cents together. That's not correct. And we don't put fractions as money here. Okay, so and things like $2.50 plus 90 cents. Okay, you have to put it clearly. Okay, so supposed to put in the dollar sign, okay, to represent, and not just put in the numbers. Okay, so these are some of the common presentation error that students are making. So please, okay, remember to put them in the correct manner. Okay, so in terms of time, okay, so if you want to put in the units, okay, don't put it halfway. Don't put it one put 85 minutes, the other one do not put. Okay, if you want to put units, you have to put in both, especially for things like that involves conversion here, like hours to minutes, right? And for liters to milliliters. Okay, so do not omit when you have mixed units, especially mixed units. So if you have hours, minutes, liters, milliliters, okay, please clearly write out the units here. Okay, so for time also, okay, if it's 12 hours time, so if it's AM, PM, okay, please write it clearly also. Okay, do not have a mix. Okay, if you are writing 24 hours, like 0630 plus 0080, okay, that one is 24 hours. So you must keep the same format here. So your answer must be in the same format here. Okay, do not change your 24 hours to 12 hours or 12 hours to 24 hours. Okay, make sure the format is correct here. Okay, for time, usually we will use a timeline, right? Use a timeline to show, to solve the word problem here. Okay, so let's say if it's 1 hour, 20 minutes after 0630. So usually we jump in terms of hour first, okay, to find the next hour, which is 0730, and then we add the minutes, right? So this is supposedly how you should solve for time problem. Okay, so another wrong presentation here. Okay, when you talk about money, dollars, and also percentage, okay, you do not mix money and the percentage here. So when you're calculating percentage discount, so remember it's percentage, right? So it must be in terms of percentage. Okay, even though you look that, okay, you put the answer is 20%, but the 100, you still need to put the 100% there, correct? Okay, so this is to make sure that this matches to your final answer units. Okay, so you have to put in the 100% here. Okay, so yes, another very important thing is please present your working neatly. Okay, imagine you look at the left one and the right one. Which one do you want to mark? Right? It's quite an obvious answer here. So comparing both worksheets, imagine you are the marker. You think which one is easier to mark? Okay, so presentation matters also. So the way you write in sequence and the way you write it more legible and clear to the marker is easier for the markers to give you the correct marking here. Okay, look at the left one. It's very, very difficult to mark. Okay, so please make sure that you follow and make sure your child to make sure that they try to write out a better presentation here so that it's easier, okay? So that you will not be penalized for any not clear working or method that the markers did not catch here. Okay, so other kind of other errors that we usually see, okay, wrong concept, yes. Transfer is also another thing. So if the question say is 1/3, sometimes your child may transfer it as 1/4, 1/5, or something else. And sometimes when your child is writing, because of bad handwriting, sometimes they write 1/9. Okay, maybe they write 1/9 until it's so bad the handwriting, even they cannot recognize their own handwriting. They see it as things like 1/7 or something. So this could be some of this kind of what we call the transfer error here. Okay, so make sure that your child has to double check. Okay, whatever that they copy from the questions or even copy from their own workings, okay, is correct here. Wrong formula. Okay, so some children will confuse with the formulas. Like for example, some students will forget that the area of triangles is actually half times base times height. They sometimes forget about the half. Okay, so remembering the wrong formula here and also the wrong units. Okay, so if the question asks you to leave your answer in terms of, like, for example, in minutes, okay, they are not supposed to write in hours. Write your answer in terms of liters, they are not supposed to write in milliliters or cm cube here. Okay, so these are things that they have to make sure, right? To read the question carefully, to make sure that they write their answers in the correct units. Careless mistakes. Yes. Okay. I do have some students whereby they actually solve for the correct answers, but in maybe for MCQ questions, they see the wrong options. They put in the wrong option numbers. Okay, that could be one of the careless mistakes that they make. So every time they must remind your child to check your answers to minimize all this careless mistake here. Okay, so for my structure, we actually have if your child has sit for this essay paper or the prelim papers. Okay, so we actually will generate this so-called the MS student progress reports. Okay, for um to show clearly what is the amount of marks that they score, and at the same time they will also show you the percentile when they compare to other my structure students. Okay, at which percentile they are at here, right? And you can see that okay, for this particular student, okay, maybe he scored 72, which is equivalent to 8L5, and the prelims, okay, he improved to get 60, get 95, which is the 8L1 grade here. Okay, so the report will shows you, besides the grades, will also shows you the area of the weakness here. Okay, so for example, we will break it into different topics, algebra, angles, area and parameters, circles, and so forth. So based on this breakdown here, you can actually see, on the right side, you can also see BMC. What are those that are actually basic, medium, and challenging questions. So we also break down in terms of the difficulties here, level. So you can see that maybe, for example, the students, he's not so good. He's probably better at doing algebra angles here, but not so good at the geometry kind of questions. Okay, unless it's those very basic kind. Okay, those challenging or medium ones, he's not doing well. So based on this report, we can actually tell, right? This student, whether it's good at numbers, whether this person is good at geometry, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this report will shows you, okay, what your child is weak at, which topic is weak at, and whether your child is good at the basic question, medium questions, or challenging questions here. Okay, so for every week, right, our worksheets will have this homework boosters at the end of each worksheet here. Okay, so these are actually weekly additional exercise, okay, that your students can take home and practice on their own. And if you need, okay, to go through the solutions, okay, you can actually find the answers. Okay, we have videos, teaching videos, that will shows you how to work out all these homework boosters questions here. Okay. Hey, so I just want to roughly know that what do you think that in your opinions, what are the three best way that your child can prepare for PSLE? Right? I believe Teacher James has also asked this earlier in the start of the webinar. So here, okay, so we have actually some of the common uh, opinions, right? That most of the parents have, right? For example, is it that purely practice more means I will get better grades, or trying out different possible type of questions? Okay, because there's so many varieties of questions here. So if you want to try out all, is it the best? Or is it learn from mistake? Okay, learn from mistake is it the best way for your child to learn, right? So, and also, how about because just now talking about the progress report, right? It will shows you which area your child is better at and which one is weaker. Okay, so these are some of the ways, okay, that you can actually identify and try to close the gaps here. Or maybe you can adopt some kind of exam strategies here. Okay, as what Teacher Jane has shared earlier. Okay, we have actually some recommended time for tackling paper one, paper two type of questions. So in terms of what we call exam smart here, right? In terms of making sure that you make the best time here, and also train out stamina. Okay, so let your child practice, 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 so that they already at the point of time, at one point of time, they're already so good at that. Uh, the paper you just give them, they can straight away do everything already, right? So these are actually some of the ways that you can actually encourage your child. Okay, so these are ways that you can help your child to better their grades in math. Okay, so the last part here. So anyone has questions so far in terms of what we have shared? Okay, let me look at the chat. Is there anything that okay. Yeah, I believe Dear James has answered all the questions in the chat, right?
Okay,
Okay, so anyone?
yeah, thanks everyone for joining us and also some of the question that has come in. So I think there's a question here that says, is there model drawing in PSLE? Okay, I suppose you're asking whether you can use model drawing as a way of answering the question. Yes, actually it's possible, right? It's possible that you can actually use it, as a one of method to actually to address the question. Okay. I think there's also another question. Let me see. Okay. So there's a question about whether in the working do you need to show the unit, okay, in addition to the final answer. So to answer this question, it's important. I would say that it's important for you to actually provide all the relevant unit in your working, support your answer. Okay, so this is to make sure that, in your presentation of your step, everything is very clear and you do not actually subconsciously actually make the error as well, right? If you didn't write the relevant unit, okay, instead of meter or centimeter, you may accidentally, forget, and then you actually end up computing using the wrong unit, to derive the final answer. Okay, so you should actually provide the unit in your working as well. And in terms of okay, Ken, I think we got all the various questions. Let's see if there's any more. Mm, okay. Okay, there's a question about should I buy exercise book for my child? Okay, I suppose the question here is about asking whether you get the assessment book, I suppose, assessment book for the child. Yeah, this is a very common question we often encountered, in terms of getting an assessment book. Of course, we all know that out there in the market, actually, there's really a lot of assessment book, okay, that you can choose from. Um, there's of course merit in terms of trying out, some assessment book, to have more practice. But I actually want to share with all parents that I think it's more important to actually attempt questions that are actually um, good question and relevant question. Because there are some books out there whereby the question um, are made difficult or also to make it, exceedingly difficult. But it may not very reflective of the kind of question that you'll be getting, or it may not be a very well set question. It can be made very tedious, but it may not necessarily be testing on the critical thinking. So I think it's important that as a parent, were to actually get assessment book. Do actually carefully look out for that, right? So especially after tonight's webinar, you have a better idea on the various category and the type of question and what we mean by critical thinking, question that's demanding based on the AO1, AO2, and AO3. I hope that will help you to be in a better position, right? To for you to assess, as you go through, books that you may thinking of getting, right? You can actually look through and hopefully that will help you to better assess the option. Okay. Natural method still needed. Okay. Let's see if there's any more answer. Did you Chang, did we miss any question? You want me to take a look? I think that's about it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because we will be sharing the videos, right? Is it right? So somebody asked
Okay,
for the
so
slides,
I
I guess.
think about I think asking for the slide on the past 10 years. Oh, okay, can. I think maybe we can share that. Changking, maybe we can scroll back to the earlier slide that actually we provide based on the past 10 years, the different category, and then the weightage. I think that was the
Okay.
slide that was asked, that was referred to. Yeah, okay, we
Past
can actually show the earlier slide. I think that one of the parents was asking for that.
um, past 10 years. Oh, this one. Right, this one?
Yeah, correct, this one. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure this is the one that you were asking for. Yeah, so this one is just to show you the information that we gathered over the past 10 years in terms of how the distribution of the weightage across the different topic. Okay. Okay. Can. Okay. I hope this helps. Okay, so I think yeah, I think if there's no further question, let me see any more. Okay, so I think there's one more question here about whether is it too early to practice prelim papers like now, right? Okay, I would say that currently I think now it's still beginning of the year. Generally speaking, it may be a little earlier to do that now. But again, it all varies from individual to individual. It all depends on your child. If your child is already very well versed and have a strong mastery of all the topic up till now, right, that they have been doing, actually there's no harm, trying some of the prelim question so that they have you know um a better idea to get use of the rigor of prelim paper. So I think no harm doing that. But generally speaking, I think you all really have to depend on individual. So if let's say your child is have not fully mastered some of the technique well, I would actually recommend that it's maybe more useful if you can help to focus and have a bit more targeted help to help the child to master all the different topics well first before we have this consolidation of them doing a full paper. Okay, because doing a full paper is quite different from doing a topical, the kind of revision, because it would demand the child to be able to, be familiar in different topic and to be able to switch from topic to topic, as they actually work through the question. So unless your child has been doing very well, in mathematics and all the various topic, has mastered very well, then of course I would say that, there's no harm, to also, expose your child to actually doing some of the, full paper, right? Okay, like the prelim paper. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Can. Yeah. So I think that answered the question. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for asking. Okay, Ken, I think there's no further questions. So I would like to really thank all parents tonight, okay, for staying with us and participating in this webinar. So I hope that's been helpful for everyone. And thank you very much for all the questions as well. Okay, I hope that has been a fruitful session for all of you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And yep, good night. Okay, we'll see you all again.